you look around, right? And you see people, they all look different. Hair color, eye color, height, sure. But one of the most striking things is skin color. Some people have very dark skin. Others have very light skin, and then there's every shade in between. It's really quite a range, isn't it? Have you ever stopped to think about why that is? Why do humans, all part of the same species, have such different skin tones? It's not just random, you know? There's a whole story behind it. A long, long story of evolution and adaptation. Think about our very early ancestors. We're talking about millions of years ago, way before what we'd recognize as modern humans. These ancestors, they were living in Africa. That's where our species started. And in Africa, especially near the equator, the sun is really strong. The sun beats down hard all day, pretty much all year. Now imagine our ape-like ancestors. They had a lot of hair, like chimps do. That hair helped protect them from the sun. But at some point, humans started losing most of that body hair. We don't have thick fur all over us anymore. Why did we lose it? Well, one idea is that as we started walking upright and moving around more, hunting and gathering in the hot African savanna, losing hair helped us stay cool. The sweating works better when there isn't thick fur trapping the heat. So, less hair meant we could cool down more efficiently. But here's the catch. Losing all that hair meant our skin was suddenly exposed. Fully exposed to that powerful African sun. Our ancestors, at that point, would have had light skin under their hair, just like chimpanzees do when you look at their skin underneath their fur. But exposing light skin to that much sun would have been a big problem. It would have caused a lot of damage. Bad sunburns, sure, but also deeper problems. And that's where melanin comes in. Melanin is a natural pigment. It's what gives color to our skin, hair, and eyes. It's produced by special cells in our skin called melanocytes. Think of it like a natural sunscreen. When your skin is exposed to the sun, these cells start producing more melanin. That's why you get a tan. It's your body's way of trying to protect itself. There are different types of melanin. The most important one for skin color is eumelanin. Eumelanin is the dark brownish black pigment. The more eumelanin your skin cells produce, the darker your skin will be. And the more dark melanin you have, the more protected your skin is from the sun's harmful ultraviolet UV radiation. So, when our hairless ancestors were running around in sunny Africa, natural selection started favoring individuals who had more melanin in their skin. Those with darker skin were better protected. They were less likely to get severe sunburns. They were less likely to get skin damage that could lead to infections or other serious issues. And critically, they were better protected from something called folate degradation. Folate, or folic acid, is a B vitamin. It's super important for our health. It's essential for cell division, DNA repair, and overall reproductive health. For women, it's especially critical during pregnancy because it helps with the healthy development of a baby's spinal cord and brain. And here's the thing about folate. It's very vulnerable to UV radiation. Strong UV rays can break down folate in the bloodstream. So, if our early ancestors had light skin and were getting a lot of sun, their folate levels could drop. This would have made it harder to reproduce successfully or lead to birth defects. Dark skin, packed with eumelanin, acts like a shield. It absorbs and scatters UV radiation before it can penetrate deep into the skin and bloodstream. This protected their folate. This meant they were healthier, they could reproduce more successfully, and their babies were healthier. Over many, many generations, this meant that people with darker skin were more likely to survive and have children. And those children would inherit the genes for dark skin. That's how, over hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors in Africa developed very dark skin. It was a perfect adaptation to life under the intense equatorial sun. The sun's radiation isn't just one type of light. It's a spectrum. We mostly talk about ultraviolet UV radiation when it comes to skin. And there are a few types of UV rays, but the ones we care about most for skin are UVA and UVB. UVA rays penetrate deeper into the skin. They contribute to aging and wrinkles. UVB rays are what cause sunburns. They are also the rays that trigger the production of vitamin D in our skin. Now, this is where things get really interesting and a bit complicated. We just talked about how dark skin is good for protecting against UV damage and folate degradation. But what about vitamin D? Vitamin D is another super important vitamin. It helps our bodies absorb calcium, which means strong bones. It also plays a role in our immune system and overall health. And our bodies make vitamin D primarily when our skin is exposed to UVB rays from the sun. So, you need some UVB rays to make vitamin D. But you also need protection from too much UV radiation to protect your folate and avoid skin damage. It's a delicate balance. In places with very intense sun, like the equator, even very dark skin can still let in enough UVB to produce vitamin D, especially since people spent a lot of time outside. The amount of UV light is so high that there's still plenty of UVB getting through, even with the strongest natural sunscreen. But humans didn't stay only in Africa. Our ancestors eventually started moving. This is the out of Africa migration. Over tens of thousands of years, groups of people began to move out of Africa and spread across the globe. They walked north into the Middle East, into Asia, and eventually into Europe. They moved across land bridges into the Americas, and as they moved, they encountered very different environments. Specifically, as they moved further north and south from the equator, they moved into areas where the sun was much less intense. Think about Scandinavia or Northern Europe compared to Central Africa, the sun doesn't shine as brightly. The days are shorter in winter, and in many places, people wear more clothes to stay warm, covering most of their skin. In these higher latitudes, the UV radiation levels were much, much lower. If you have very dark skin in an environment with low UV, you run into a problem. Your dark skin, which is so good at blocking UV, now blocks too much of it. It blocks so much UVB that your body struggles to make enough vitamin D, and vitamin D deficiency is a serious issue. It can lead to rickets, a disease that weakens bones, especially in children. It can also cause other health problems, so suddenly having very dark skin in these northern climates became a disadvantage. People with very dark skin were more likely to suffer from vitamin D deficiency. This made them less healthy. It could impact their ability to survive and reproduce. This created a new selective pressure. In these new, less sunny environments, individuals who had genes for lighter skin were actually at an advantage. Lighter skin allows more UVB to penetrate. It's less of a shield. So in places where UVB was scarce, lighter skin was better for getting enough vitamin D. People with lighter skin could make enough vitamin D even from the weaker sun. They were healthier, they had healthier children, and those children inherited genes for lighter skin. Over thousands of years, as different groups of people migrated and settled in various parts of the world, their skin color adapted to their local environments. This is why you see a general gradient of skin color around the world. The closer people's ancestors lived to the equator, the darker their skin tends to be. The further away, the lighter their skin. It's not a perfect line, of course, because migration patterns are complex and people move. But it's a strong general trend. Think about people whose ancestors lived in Northern Europe, like the Irish or Norwegians. Their skin is often very pale. This is because their ancestors lived for many, many generations in places with very little sun for much of the year. Their bodies adapted to maximize vitamin D production from what little sun was available. They can make enough vitamin D even on cloudy days or during winter, assuming some skin exposure. But their very pale skin offers almost no protection against strong UV. That's why people with very light skin burn easily in the sun. It's a trade-off. On the other hand, people whose ancestors lived in equatorial Africa or parts of South Asia often have very dark skin. Their bodies adapted to protect themselves from intense, constant UV radiation. Their skin can block a huge amount of UV without getting burned, and because the sun is so strong there, they still get plenty of UVB for vitamin D production. So, skin color is an amazing example of human evolution. It's a direct adaptation to the environment. Specifically, it's an adaptation to the balance between getting enough UV protection to protect folate and prevent skin damage and getting enough UVB exposure to produce vitamin D. The genes that control skin color are complex. There isn't just one skin color gene. There are many genes involved, and they work together to determine how much melanin your skin cells produce and what type of melanin. Some genes control the pathways for melanin production. Other genes affect how melanin is distributed in the skin. Scientists have identified many of these genes, like MC1R, SLC24A5, and TYR. Small changes or variations in these genes, accumulated over thousands of years, led to the vast range of skin tones we see today. It's not about big, dramatic changes, but small, subtle shifts in genetic code that influence melanin production. It's also important to remember that this process wasn't just about lightening skin. It was about adapting skin color to optimal levels for a given environment. Sometimes that meant getting lighter, but in other cases, it meant staying dark, even in places that aren't strictly equatorial. Consider indigenous populations in Australia. Parts of Australia are quite far from the equator, and yet many Aboriginal Australians have very dark skin. Why? Because Australia, even in its southern parts, receives very high levels of UV radiation. The ozone layer is thinner there, and the sun's rays are very intense. So, even in what we might call a temperate zone, the evolutionary pressure to maintain dark skin for UV protection remains strong. Their ancestors have lived on that continent for tens of thousands of years, adapting perfectly to the local conditions. And what about groups like the Inuit who live in the Arctic, where the sun is incredibly weak for much of the year? You might expect them to have very light skin, but many Inuit have skin that is somewhat darker than people from Northern Europe. This is an interesting exception that helps us understand the whole picture better. The Inuit traditionally get a huge amount of their vitamin D from their diet. They eat a lot of fatty fish, seals, and whale blubber, which are incredibly rich in vitamin D, so they don't rely as heavily on sun exposure for vitamin D production. This means the evolutionary pressure to lighten their skin for vitamin D synthesis was much lower, or even absent. Their skin color, while not as dark as equatorial populations, shows that diet can also play a role in buffering against the need for certain skin adaptations. It also suggests their ancestors might have arrived in the Arctic relatively recently, or their original skin tone was somewhat darker when they migrated. So, the story of human skin color is complex and fascinating. It's not just a simple matter of light or dark. It's a nuanced gradient shaped by migration, time, and the specific environmental pressures of different regions. It also highlights that race as a social construct is very different from biological adaptation. Skin color is just one of many superficial traits that adapted to local conditions, just like hair texture or eye shape. It's a continuous spectrum, not a set of distinct categories. Today, with global travel and migration, many people live in places where their ancestral skin color isn't perfectly matched to the local UV levels. This can have health implications. For example, a person with very dark skin whose ancestors live near the equator might now live in northern Canada. They might struggle to produce enough vitamin D from the sun, especially in winter. They might need to take vitamin D supplements or adjust their diet. On the flip side, someone with very light, easily burning skin whose ancestors lived in northern Europe might now live in Australia or Florida. They have a much higher risk of sunburn and skin cancer if they don't take precautions. These modern challenges just underline how powerful and precise these evolutionary adaptations were. Our bodies, including our skin, are designed to thrive in specific environments. When we move out of those environments, we sometimes need to make adjustments, whether through diet, clothing, or medical care. It's also important to remember that skin color is just one trait. It's not linked to intelligence, morality, or any other complex human characteristic. It's purely an adaptation for environmental survival, primarily related to sun exposure. It's a testament to the incredible adaptability of our species. Humans spread across the entire planet, from scorching deserts to frozen tundras, and our bodies found ways to cope and thrive in each unique place. The different shades of our skin are a visible record of that long, amazing journey. And that's really the whole story. From bare-skinned ancestors sweating on the savannah, needing protection from a harsh sun, to groups migrating across continents, facing new challenges with too little sun. It's a constant balancing act between enough UV and too much UV. Dark skin helps block the sun's harmful rays and protect folate. Light skin helps absorb enough sun to make vitamin D. It's a beautiful, simple, and elegant solution designed by millions of years of evolution. And it reminds us that despite all our superficial differences, we are all part of the same incredibly adaptable human family.